Here we have a bit of a slower match than usual. This is the elusive even match. This doesn't happen very often on the West server. For some reason, West seems to go very sharply one way or the other. It's quite rare to come across a match where the teams are very evenly matched against each other. Playing in my Cent 7, platooned up with Boba Fett, coming back from a very long break in his IS-8, and Adrid, still in his T-30. Prokhorovka is a pretty decent map for the Cent. However, lately I haven't been going to the hill as much. North Spawn does have a better hill position for the Centurion, but in this case I decided that instead of going hill I would work the middle of the map. Don't ask me why. I did have a reason. I did say in TeamSpeak why I was going this way, I seem to recall, but I do not remember what that reason was. It may well have just been the simple fact that the last few times I played this map and gone hill, pubbies didn't cover mid and it caused very preventable losses. So I am lit on the way into position, but the E50 isn't able to get a decent shot at me. I pop up, looking for shots on him. Unfortunately I'm not quick enough on the trigger, and so he gets in behind the house here. But he's not positioned very well, and so I am able to get a shot in, as well as actually most of my team. It'd be very nice to get him out of the game. He is one of the enemy team's best players, at least on paper. He's also one of the tanks which is a real threat to my Centurion. Now you'll notice that the enemy team have a Waffenträger E100. Typically waffles on this map tend to go into the forest and just sit on the 1 and 2 lines trying to clip into whatever's stupid enough to drive into the middle of the map. In this case the enemy waffle actually didn't do that, and if I try and get this replay to run a little bit better, you'll soon see where he's gone. I did take a couple hits there from the hill, and so I pulled back for a moment just to get unspotted and wait for the enemies to lose interest. That T-44 is being a pain. He keeps popping up and lighting stuff. He has a 122mm gun, so he's not actually much of a threat shooting wise, but his spotting is a serious problem, and this is just running worse than it was before. The E50's pulled back into hard cover. I would have too if I was in his situation. Adrid's still on his way to the hill. Boba's already there. And our team's spread out mostly across the center and west of the map, which isn't really good positioning, but for now at least it's not turned into much of a problem. The enemy still have 2 light tanks up, both AMXs, 11375, 11390. We have a single AMX plus our Walker Bulldog. Oh, sorry, that's not a Walker Bulldog, that's a T-49. My apologies. They have a similar silhouette on the team roster. Looking for a shot at Löwe here. His turret's quite thick, but if I get his cupola I should be able to pen him. Instead, the Cent presents a target, so I'm able to hit him. The T-34 is oblivious as the Cent backs away. So I'll take shots at what I can get. I think that was a blind hit. And now the 4502. And there we go. Adrid was taken out by the Waffenträger E100 and told me he was on the hill. Which is about the worst thing you could possibly imagine when you're in this position, because he can actually render me, so if I get spotted I have every chance of getting clipped into by a Waffenträger E100. So I was really playing a lot less aggressively for quite a while here out of fear that he would see me and begin clipping at me. Something's blocking my shot on the VK, so there's no point sitting there in the open waiting for him to come out. The enemy 1390 is on the hill and now in his garage. However, the 1375 is still up and he will remain a complete pain in the ass the entire of the game. Just the whole time he was constantly spotting me. Waffenträger is actually looking my way, so I sure as shit don't want to stay up there. This is a problem in the Centurion. Although you do have a very accurate high pen gun, you have really quite poor on the move accuracy. And so when you're forced to constantly pop up and down very quickly like this, it doesn't give you time to aim, and so your shots are liable to either completely miss or bounce off of something you weren't aiming at. And so it drastically reduces your damage potential. I think I actually covered this in a recent video, but in this situation, T62 or Object 140 would have been a better choice for this spot, since it wouldn't be as badly affected by the constant peek and poking. The Centurion is much better in this spot when it has the time to aim its shots properly. Obviously the Soviet tanks are also harder to spot and a lot lower to the ground, so the Waffenträger would have a more difficult target. I wasn't actually lit there, but the guy next to me just bought it. The Waffenträger put a shell into him, so I backed off, and I'm glad I did, because as soon as I fired my gun I was lit. Still looking for shots on this Löwe. Unfortunately it's not happening, just not being able to really let my aim settle because I'm worried about getting hit from the hill is playing hell with my ability to really make the position work for me. Every time I come up I'm getting spotted. I decided I've had enough of that shit. I don't want to be shot at by a waffle, so the best way to avoid getting shot at by a puppy is to not be in his render range. Most puppies do not use XVM map mob, and even those which do, don't know how to use it to blind shot something that's beyond their render distance. I've done it a couple times, you may have seen me do it in some of my videos, but it's not something that your average player is capable of doing, and in fact it's hard enough for me most of the time. My crew sound rather dejected about that one. I certainly was, bouncing off the back of a Löwe's turret. I just caught him at a bad angle. Again, not being able to wait for my aim to settle is really messing with me. So there's the 1375, still up, still spotting for his team. I'm still in danger here because of those heavies to my left. I'm also being shot by the 4502B from the K1, K2 area, and so I really can't afford to sit around here much longer. I take a shot at the Leo, but unfortunately I lagged right as I fired and the shot went way wide. Didn't really have any chance of ever hitting him. I shift right, or to the west by cardinal directions, to try and put some distance between myself and the heavies, just make sure I'm well and truly out of render for anything on the hill, and also to try and find a bit better terrain to work over this Leopard and 1375. It would also be a bonus if I was able to spot the VK for my team and get some help with him. Now I got shot from the Ferdinand, sitting back on the railway crossing, at sort of saddle at J7. He hasn't moved all game. He's been sitting there since he was spotted at the start, and in fact he stays there right until the bitter end. We are trading almost 1 for 1. We have been all match. This is not something you see very often on the West server. I unfortunately take a pretty meaty hit there, considering the amount of hit points I have left, and now I'm in serious danger range. Anything left alive on the enemy team is capable of one-shotting me, including... actually no, they're light tanks at 1375, not a 1390. So correction, it will take him 2 shots to kill me, but everything else it will take just 1. I'm forced to sit in this bowl now. Because there's no arty, this is relatively safe. In fact, this is about as safe as I'm going to get on this map. But again, my low hit points and just the sheer number of guns out to get me mean that I have to pop up and pop down. I don't really get time to effectively take my aim and get a good steady shot at a target. And when facing a 4502, as I was just there, that's a serious problem. That thing's frontal armor is now the best in the game. Even the mouse's armor is less consistent and less irritating to deal with, shall we say, in a tier 9 or 10 medium. I would definitely say it was overbuffed. The front armor is just too strong now. A lot of tank destroyers, tier 10 tank destroyers even, will bounce off of it. Yes, you can pen its turret face in Cupola, they're still considerable weak spots, but you aren't even going to hit them at long range. So unless you get up close in a brawl, which is that tank's strength, you know, he'll find a corner and side scrape off it and then just murder you. Not such a good idea to engage them frontally. You have to flank, and if he's somewhere where he can't easily be flanked, such as where he is now, yeah, that's going to be a problem. Got to wait for his turret to turn, so you need teammates to distract him from another direction, so when he turns to engage them, you can pop him through the side of the turret, which is still relatively weak. Getting frustrated by the AMX constantly spotting me. And here we go, the 4502 is slowly moving. He turns his turret just a little, and I'm able to put a shell through the side of it. You can hear the 57 clipping. The 57 is clipping at him, he has not penned him a single time. There's no point frontally engaging one of those, not anymore. Thankfully for me, he's still got his turret angled slightly, and so my shot goes straight through the cheek of his turret and puts him out of his misery. Slurva might only have 7 hit points, but remember, I'm 208 hit points. If he lands a shot on me and it pens, he will kill me. What makes a tank threatening more than anything else is its alpha strike and its pen. The tank's remaining hit points comes far down that list of concerns. That guy gets left on 1 hit point before finally being cleaned up, and the AMX runs. I'm trying to find a shot on him here. I don't want him working his way around my side and getting a shot into me, but it looks like he gives up on that idea. And instead, I take a quick shot at the Centurion before he realizes he's been spotted. It now looks like we have a steady advantage at 12 to 8. We have 4 tanks up on the enemy. Not for long. T-34 takes Boba out. And then he also takes out RE-25 immediately afterwards. It is now 12 to 10. A very, very close game. We're also down to 2 minutes 40 on the clock. Now this match is mostly played out now. I'm just going to make a point about the mod that RT49 has. It's presumably some mod pack he's installed automatically alerts his team to the fact he's been spotted in Russian, which doesn't help much on the NA server where most people don't speak it, but that's what he's saying, I'm spotted, help. Those mods are pretty much useless. If you're going to have some kind of auto-queued message for when you're spotted, you need to at least tell people which grid square you're in. The help command does ping your location on the map, but too much help spam is going to just go over people's heads. Could not believe that missed. Personally though, those mods are pretty useless. Most of the time, the team does not need to know where you are lit, or if you are even lit. There are times where it's relevant, such as if you get spotted from a position you expect, say, a very big tank destroyer to be or something. But in those cases, it's better to just actually let the team know, hey, I'm lit at such and such grid square, probably from such and such position. I think that such and such tank is there. That's useful information. Just I'm lit, help is not useful. It's basically just spam. And actually, since I've been meaning to bring this up for a while, this brings me to my point of why I always tee up targets. It does fill the chat with a lot of what appears to be useless information, and no doubt to a lot of people it probably is useless. The reason I do that, other than the fact it's a habit which has just been ground into me over the years I've played, is it not only tells people what I'm aiming at, what I'm about to fire at, which is particularly useful if I'm, say, in Arty or if there's friendly tanks trying to brawl with whatever it is. It also puts a big ping above it, you know, big flashing symbol, and pubbies have their attention very easily drawn by big flashing symbols floating over things. And so at its most base function, it's an attempt by me to get the puppies to actually focus fire on whatever I'm shooting. Often, if I'm not actually able to get a shot at something, I'll still tee something up, and I will constantly tee it up until I see puppies start putting fire on it, simply because I'm prioritizing targets. A lot of people that play this game, particularly, average and below players, let's say, they do not have the requisite skills and knowledge to actually pick out priority targets. They just shoot at whatever they see, and they will quite happily shoot a bottom tier light tank that's not doing anything over an actual threatening target. So in that regard, it's basically just me trying to tell the puppies, hey, this is important, please shoot it. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. As I said, it's actually a habit, and it's such an ingrained habit now that when I have been chat banned because you can't use the preset voice communication command, or not voice commands, but like the little contextual comms commands, you can't use them when you chat banned. So when I'm chat banned and I go to hit T and nothing comes up, it actually really spins me out, and I think it probably doesn't help my team much either, because they can't tell what I'm about to shoot at. They also can't tell what needs to be shot at. Some people do it as well. Most people don't tee their targets up ever. Arty will typically do it more than tanks, because they at least realize, they don't want friendly tanks ramming whatever it is they're about to fire at. But I think it is handy to do sometimes, and that's why I do it. And I can't see myself really stopping, partly because it is just a habit at this point. It's second nature to me. I cannot fire my gun without hitting T first. I literally cannot do it. I try and it doesn't work. But I wouldn't mind seeing more players do it, but preferably players who know what they're doing. I don't want to see shitters teeing up completely pointless targets, because that would end very poorly. Also, I should point out, it does come in handy in Clan Wars. Typically you'll have a caller directing people onto their primary targets. Something we found in NDP, both older NDP and in the NDP Reconquista, was that it's more efficient to have not just a caller for the field, but also have like an element leader. So for each group of tanks you have at some part of the map, you have one person who will be responsible for making micromanagement decisions, basically. So if they think somebody needs to pull back slightly behind a rock, or if they think somebody needs to if they think their group needs to focus a particular target, they're responsible for all that stuff. So they do all the teeing up and such and such. Now, when we had Chair, that didn't matter as much, because Chair typically was the first person to die in a battle, and then he had this kind of bizarre omniscience I've never seen since in any Clan Wars caller. Chair would be able to deliver like a really high level command, such and such group of tanks go here and do this, and then immediately he would single out a person on the other side of the map and tell them to move back 3 feet, or to edge forwards into a bush or something. So he was quite adept in not just the macro stuff, but also micromanaging individual players. Now, with the NDP Reconquista, because we didn't have Chair and most of us were very inexperienced leaders, it was a lot more flexible to have one person, say myself or Hardest, call overall strat, and then have a leader within each element call targets for that group, and then if need be, the overall caller would override that and call a target for all players. Some maps it didn't matter so much, like on Ruinberg, if our strat worked according to plan, the whole team would be able to focus down a tank. But if our strat went haywire or the enemy did something unexpected, it was nice to have that element of flexibility, and I think flexibility has always been a strength that NDP used to really get ahead, particularly back in the day when we were, actual somebodies on the global map. I think we were probably the most flexible clan, except maybe MLP or some of the other really, really good guys. A lot of our enemies would just run the same strat over and over. AOD would do it. GVN had the GVN Ruinberg strat, which was basically just a giant blob of mice. They would not differ their strat whatsoever, no matter what happened. And so it took us 1 or 2 meeting engagements to figure out how to beat their strat, and then we would continually beat them every time they stepped to us, because they just couldn't adapt. Whereas in NDP, we were not afraid to change a strat. we weren't afraid to just drop the plan, throw it out the window, and come up with a new one on the fly, and Chair was especially good at that, and I think that's what actually made us such a powerful force, considering the fact that in those days most of us weren't actually very good at the game, and we didn't have an ideal team comp most of the time. A good leadership and good initiative amongst your actual regular members can cover a lot of sins in team comp and individual skill at the actual tanks game. Also, I should point out though that it's a fine balance you have to tread. This is going to be getting a bit longer than I intended for this video. I wasn't even sure if I'd talk about this, but fuck it, let's get into it. Another goon, Hellsaw, has been in numerous clans over the years. He's killed most of the ones he was in, just by his mere presence. But he noticed that in a lot of clans, and I did notice this happening with NDP during the Reconquista as well, people would not actually do what the caller told them to do. They would do what they thought was a good idea. A lot of, particularly this was really bad with Reconquista era NDP, and also Pansy and Two Grills, One Cup, and all the other goon clans that followed on from actual, the good old days of goons ruling Central Europe. The problem is that when you have a large collection of players like goons, or like, not really high level players like G, but sort of mid to decent level unicums, the kind who nobody really knows, but they do have good stats and they do usually play well. The problem is these players typically play clan wars like they are playing a pub match. They try and preserve their own hit points at the expense of their team. If they think something is going to get them shot, they won't do it, and they will focus whichever tank they think is the biggest threat to them. This does not work in clan wars. Clan wars requires every player of the team to just subordinate themselves to carrying out whatever the current strat is, or to at least getting a win for the team. Now, I'm not saying that a lot of people don't try and win pub matches. They certainly do. The problem is that it requires a different approach. You can win a pub match by using pubbies as shields and just basically winging it. You can't do that in clan wars. If everyone's out for themselves in clan wars, your team will fall apart, your strat will fall into disarray, you will lose. It doesn't work. If somebody has to roll out and take, alpha strike from 3 or 4 tanks to get off one shot because that's what the strat calls for, it needs to happen. You can't really argue with it. The moment you start questioning your caller, it all goes to shit, because as the old saying goes, a bad plan executed well is far better than a good plan executed poorly. You could have the best callers on earth. If your players aren't listening to them, there's no point. You may as well just go play pub matches. And so I think that's a really important thing, treading that fine line of having enough initiative to be flexible and to actually meet challenges as they arise, rather than just relying on the same tired strat that everyone already knows. And actually during the Reconquista we did kind of reuse the same strat too many times, mostly because I couldn't come up with new ones fast enough. This is the hazard of being new to strat calling. So you need to be flexible enough to avoid being predictable, but you also need to be obedient enough and disciplined enough, I should say. Disciplined is probably the word, to retain unit cohesion and retain a sense that you're there to actually follow the plan and win the battle. And if necessary, you might need to change the plan a little, but you aren't there to just do your own thing. You're there to actually win the battle for the team. And even if you think you have a better plan than the strat caller, you can't have 2 or 3 different people thinking they've got the best plan in the world. It all goes to shit. As Hellsaw will probably tell you if you ever ask him about his time in Vault. Anyway, thanks for watching. Apologies got a bit long, but I did think maybe I should talk about that, since it is a thing which I don't believe I've mentioned before, or at least not for a very, very long time, and I think it is something that's important to know for both pub matches and clan wars. Hopefully I will catch you next time. Best of luck in the field. I'll see you later.